Yeah,
Sorry.
basically last November, I met with the town council and discussed my idea for the tennis courts in Marine Park. And they seemed to be somewhat receptive. I did meet with Stan, Juanita, May Mena, a couple of other folks were there. And then I sent the proposal in. I didn't really hear an affirmative or any kind of movement on the proposal. And I was wondering what the town was looking to do with the courts, if there's any other proposals, and if they'd like to hear my ideas on what we should do with Marine Park as a nonprofit organization that looks to promote the sport of clay court tennis, not hard court tennis, because they're two different sports. And for old seniors, for youth, I have support and sponsorship from the USTA, a community of tennis people in Red Bank and surrounding areas that would use the courts. And the cost would be, I think, somewhat minimal for Red Bank if they're able to give a lease for $1 a year for 20 years. And make use of the courts because the area is lying fallow in the weeds, literally and figuratively.
And Paul, this is just for the record, just let me give the council a little bit of background. Paul and his wife obviously live in Little Silver, and Paul and his wife, and I don't know, I think your family is too, very avid tennis players, correct?
We introduced them to tennis at a
You got a
young
nice
age.
court in New York.
Yeah.
So I have not seen the presentation or what you have to propose.
Okay.
I guess it was brought before the committee, and I know I was out of town at the last council meeting. I know there was discussion about the tennis courts. Do you have a packet to hand each one of the council members up here, or has Juanita has the Parks and Rec committee received that?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Stan. I'm sorry.
Council President, at the last meeting, there was, Paul was not here, but there were some other representatives that said that they had a proposal that had been, they suggested modified. I don't know if it was or not, but I did take a copy of that and distribute it to the committee. The committee had planned to review same and also to follow up with a follow-up meeting with you and the borough attorney, because we can't just go and say, yes, there's a procedure that has to be followed. So they wanted to maybe discuss the proposal again. They were looking at other options, but really focusing on other infrastructure problems down there at Marine Park first. We had issues with our sewer lift station, we had issues with the electrical, and until we decided where that equipment was going to be and what we could and could not do with that, we couldn't really go forward with the recreational part of it. That was sort of the biggest part of the delay, but I think the committee is ready to now start addressing the recreational side of it, and we'll be reaching out to you to have a meeting to discuss what your thoughts are. I'm hearing some things slightly different than what we had heard before. Might be better for a more favorable thing for them to consider. And we'll be reaching out to you probably tomorrow to set something up for next week.
Stanley, do we have what Paul has?
Yeah, we have his original proposal.
Yeah.
And I looked, because he wasn't here, I wasn't sure it was the same proposal, so I took a copy of what the people had last week and sent it to the committee. So, and I think the next step is probably to meet with you and make sure that we're all talking about the same thing, and have the attorney there so that we can talk with our CFO and the attorney about if we wanted to entertain the proposal, how we go about doing it. We can't just say, okay, Paul, it's yours. We probably have to do an RFP and seek other proposals.
Well, that's just standard operating procedure right there. Hey, Paul, let me ask you a question. Little Silver has tennis courts at Markham Place, right?
They're hardcore.
Yeah, I know, yeah. Are there tennis courts anywhere else?
Hardcore
I'm curious.
tennis?
In Little Silver, I'm just curious.
Oh, the high school has
Sickles,
courts?
no,
There
Sickles.
used to be tennis courts over by the public boat launch in Little Silver.
That's
Yeah,
Sickles.
there's still 2 courts there.
But let me ask you a question. I guess what I'm gonna, how does the borough handle scheduling of those tennis courts? Just out of curiosity, or do they, or they don't at all? First come, first serve?
That's it. Yeah. They're public courts that don't really, but they're not the same thing as playing on a clay court.
Oh, I understand that. Oh, I get it. Oh,
Okay.
trust me, I get it. I realize, I know the difference. I dealt with the tennis courts, been on the council 12 years now, so I never knew anything, the difference between them, but I do know the difference, trust me. So listen, if we have what you have, Juanita departs it, Stanley's got it. Give him like 4 weeks to get back with you. If he doesn't get back with you, I'm sure somebody on this council or myself, you'll get a call from somebody, let you know that. And you, of course, you got my name, don't be afraid to track me down as well.
Okay.
Okay? And we'll take a look at it. What your wife was explaining to me sounded pretty exciting, but we'll see how that goes. And like Stanley says, if anything happens in that direction, standard procedure is, by law, to some degree, to keep it simple, that it would have to go out for public bid. You know, for like, if you wanted to do something with the tennis courts, whatever it is, lease, whatever, we have to give everybody the opportunity to take a look at that. So, be more than
This
happy.
is public bid for a nonprofit
Yeah, this
organization?
is a nonprofit.
Well, okay, so maybe that's a stipulation to take it left where we don't need it, but like I said, I really don't know what's in the packet, but if you know, we'll take a look at it. We'll write it up.
I think it really what we should be doing is that the proposal's been presented to Parks and Rec, let Parks and Rec come back with an opinion or a recommendation as to us. I know that you explained what, what you as a resident of Little Silver have done, what Little Silver has just followed. Matter of fact, I think Danny's not here, but maybe we can look into that. But I think let Parks and Rec and Ms. Lewis come back and give the recommendations. And I think it would be appropriate that if that proposal is hand-delivered to Ms. Lewis today, and Ms. Lewis can instruct Mr. Sickles to reach out to you and potentially give a presentation of what Parks and Rec.
Okay. The proposal was already emailed, so it's not really, and it hasn't been furthered or finalized simply because we hadn't gotten direction from the town, and there's significant cost in even just
And
getting the plans.
with respect to the bidding, I'm pretty sure, even though it's a non-profit and it's not run by the borough, there's going to be some sort of public bid required, even if there are, because potentially there's other non-profits that want to run it.
You know, Mr. DuPont, I do have a copy of, I don't know if your ordinance is, purposes for which leases for a public purpose may be made. And,
Yeah, that might be the case. I'm familiar.
and yeah, and
I'm
it's
familiar
got
with-
all these listings
I'm
of how you
familiar-
can.
I'm familiar with the statute with the exceptions of the public bidding. The question
Well, you
is,
don't have to do,
but we're not at that stage. I think what we're.
No, but I want to make it clear that I think due to the fact that it is a nonprofit and it is an activity for the promotion of health, safety, morals, and general welfare of
But
the
again,
community.
we don't know. That's
Well,
the
I'm
sec-
looking at the ordinance here.
I'm not saying you're not. What I'm saying is that we haven't reached that stage.
I would have to see and think.
I'm
I would have to see and
just
think, if you're gonna lease a piece of property from the borough of Redmond for $1 for 20 years, I would be like, wait a minute, I'm gonna give a piece of property away for
I don't-
20
I
years
don't
to something to a
think-
nonprofit?
Well, you gave 51 Monmouth away to a
Yeah,
nonprofit
what do you
for
mean?
$1.
Wait a minute, wait a
To
minute.
the
Either
mayor's
that or
nonprofit.
inheritance, and put 1.8 million into a defensive, which the borough didn't want to
Give it
do.
away for
Mr.
$1.
Murphy, Mr. Murphy, and Councilman Murphy, I don't really think that discussion needs to be held this evening. I
No,
think
I'm
the
just saying
purpose
it's
of-
not, it's something that
That's
Red
subject-
Bank has done in the past.
I'm not debating that now. All I'm saying is that the next argument that has to come forth is from the Parks and Rec.
Yes.
So, Mr.
So we'll move it in that direction.
Ms. Lewis, just simply, he said email it to us. Chairwoman, Ms. Lewis is going to respond, and so I think that's the procedure.
I just have one quick question. Has anything changed from what we originally saw in November?
To my knowledge, no. I
So
mean, the
the
evidence.
structure the same terms, everything is the same?
Everything is consistent, however, we need to get town engineers working with architects to understand if this can be done. That the issue is how much should I invest in this project? If it can't be done, it can't be done, because we have to raise the lower court, basically put a rock bed.
That's what's changed. What's changed is what we need to do with our infrastructure. I'm sure it's different than what you may have anticipated, and that's why I think we need to meet
Okay.
and make sure we're all talking apples to apples.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I think.
And also, this is unique. We have not, in my knowledge, done anything like this for a 20-year term. We've done leases to nonprofits for Boys Club and et cetera. We've done leases for parking garages. But this is unique, so
I think-
we can do it, but there's a procedure that has to be followed.
Right, and I really think that if we just give it to Parks and Rec. Parks and Rec is a very efficient committee. Its leader is fearless, so I think if the discussion would just lend itself, and I'm not debating the second issue, I'm not here to debate that. I'm just saying the proper protocol is to send, I don't need any engineering inspections now, is to send it to the Parks and
understand
Rec
that.
Committee. And let's just let them
Well, the
come back with
question
us.
was brought, but it was brought up at the last meeting, that, the mayor had said that because, they couldn't accept bids, but when in fact, that's not true. It's a nonprofit, and there are different situations where you can give.
I thought you questioned whether we needed to accept bids.
I think you may be accurate. I think the discussion though is first,
I don't think you can really get an answer to any of this yet because you're too premature in the process. If the town decided that, in fact, this is something that would make sense under certain circumstances, they would then come up with some specifications that would allow someone like this gentleman or anybody else that had a similar type project to offer something. But until those criteria are identified, it's premature. Yes, there are circumstances where a town can make its property available to a nonprofit because it furthers their interest of the town, and there's instances, as Stanley has indicated. So nothing's off the table, but I think, as Mr. Dupont indicates, once the town decides it wants to go in a certain direction, it then has to lay out the criteria, and once those criteria are out there, everyone can focus on those and put their proposals together.
yeah, and sir, I think we have your contact information correct if it's been sent by November. So hopefully within the next week to 10 days, Stanley Sickles will ask you to come in and certainly discuss it. So
Great.
thanks.
Have you had any alternate proposals for the property at this point? I mean, because it sits there as an eyesore, and I drive by once every week or 2 weeks. Others might look at it from their office, and I'm just curious as to what other potential alternative. I know
What
Stan
other
mentioned the
options?
infrastructure issues, which take time.
What other options? You talk about other options. What are these other options you speak of?
But wait. You're asking other options, and at this point in time, the Parks and Rec Committee still hasn't come back with a viable option.
Well, Mr. Sickles has spoken about,
But I think Mr. Sickles is not the chairman of this committee.
Well, then-
Juanita Lewis is.
then
And-
Ms. Lewis.
Yeah,
can you
but I
tell
guess
us
the
what
problem
other
going down
options?
that path is that even if you had discussions, or even if you had hypothetical situations that aren't real, why would you bring forth the discussions?
Mr. DuPont, in the name of transparency, I'm asking a very simple question here.
You are not,
They have spoken about different options for the
how would
last
you,
two meetings.
how would you know that?
They said it with their words.
Yeah, but if the
I
option isn't viable, and the option is just a hypothetical,
Well,
wouldn't
I
you
just
want
think
a
that's
con?
very non-transparent.
Yeah, but don't, how is that not transparent? Right now, the chairman or the chairwoman hasn't presented her idea. She may come back with a couple ideas.
I
So-
do know that the Navasink River Rowing Club down there has definite interest in that area for
But not
potential.
courts.
Know exactly where the courts are. Yeah, they've done drawings and things like that, measured out the area to see if the boats would fit there. I don't know that they've made a formal pitch to it, but I know they have certainly spoken.
I still think to allow Councilwoman Lewis to come back with her comments. She's been a leader in this community for years. She's a strong-willed woman, very independent, I might add.
Mr. DuPont,
She's going to come
she
back.
can speak for herself, can't she? Why are you?
Well, because it just,
for
I'm
herself? Yeah, you want to push
ready,
yourself.
I'm done.
Hey, Paul, thank you very much.
Okay.
Appreciate that, man.
Thank you.
We'll get back to you. Thank you. Thank you, Paul.
I just want to ask one question to Mr. Sickles. Mr. Sickles, the tennis courts are a valuable asset and,
The clay courts?
yes.
That were destroyed in the storm, the clay courts?
Yes, and they were
Okay.
probably in a storm many times, but they are a valuable and unique asset. And what I wanted to ask was, did you apply for FEMA money to restore them?
There is no FEMA money for restoration of recreational
Okay,
activities.
that's
We
fine.
checked into it.
Anybody
And
else in
there's
the
no
audience?
insurance money for that.
Okay, thank you.
What's your name and address, please? The record.
Anthony Sotaro, I live on Spring Street and have business in town. First, Art, I wanted to thank you and the fire department for coming to the service for my grandfather and speaking. It was greatly appreciated by my father and the family.
Thank you.
I wanted to come and check out what was going on with the tennis courts because my office sits right at the top of the hill and I do look at those tennis courts every day. And it is an abomination, so to speak, that the waterfront, as most of us know in this town, as I look at the picture behind your head there, is the best asset that this town has that is underutilized, I believe. So it is disheartening to see a year and a half plus after the storm that nothing has been done. I understand there's a lot of things that go into it. As most of you know, I did organize a charity organization after Sandy, working with victims, and also led several initiatives with local governments after that, with a lot of demolition. In the area, we demoed over 300 houses in Union Beach and Kingsburg. So I'm well adept at working with some of these issues that can arise. I guess I offer my services to help with whatever we can do, whether that's in organizing a charity event, which Ed knows I work with River Center a lot on the Red Bank Wedding Walk, to raise funds for whatever is the best suited for that, whether it be the tennis courts or there's something else that Stanley, because of what has come up with the infrastructure, we've been working since Sandy on how do you develop and build communities towards a sustainable future, not just doing something to do it, but that it's going to better all parties involved. So I'll definitely touch base with you after, and whoever wants to touch base with me, I'd love to.
Thank you, Anthony, appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Anthony, you also keep the library in the back of you mind.
Yeah, absolutely.
Anybody else from the audience wish to comment? Name and address, just for the record,
Yes,
sir.
no problem.
Thank you.
My name is Daniel Pontone. I live on 141 Harding Road. I'm also
Little Silver?
Red Bank.
Red Bank, okay.
I'm also a podiatrist in Red Bank. I've been playing on those courts for 25 years. I look at those courts now. Marine Park is the jewel of the Riviera. You guys, 3 years. Do I have to get Trump in here to fix it? Come on, guys, let's get it together and get it fixed. It's a shame. I go by and it's tears to my eyes that I can't play tennis anymore. I have to go somewhere else. Please fix it. The bureaucracy is just destroying this country. You gotta get it together, okay? Thank you very much.
Thank you. You know, for years, those tennis courts were maintained and taken care of by, what's his name, Stan?
Harold Potts.
Hold on one time, Nicoletti. And listen, I mean, I never realized either, but the clay courts are, I don't know if it's so much to say expensive to maintain or difficult to maintain, but there is a procedure to maintaining clay courts more than any type of tennis court there is. I always thought that we had a good little thing going with him as far as he really maintained them courts. Basically, what we did was drop off the clay.
He's in on this too, Art.
Hang on a second. So, you know, I understand now that the courts are gone. I don't know, I assume it's going to take a lot of money to do it. I don't know if there's money out there to do it, and I know Paul is going to turn some stuff in, so hopefully we can work something out. But I know the courts have been there for a long time, and we had a nice little system going there for a while, but hopefully we can get them back up and running. Anybody else from the audience?
Yeah, John Hutton lives in Fisher Place in Red Bank. A couple of things I want to mention. First of all, it's the first time I've heard that there is no money in the FEMA to do the courts. Now, I understood part of that whole deal was going to be some money allocated to do the courts. I understand that's out now. Is that right?
We were told it wasn't eligible for FEMA funding.
Okay.
Other things were, but that, the courts.
Okay, I thought that was going to be part of the deal. Evidently, that's out. I don't know about this other proposal. I know there's things out there. There's two things I want to say. First of all, I do have a list, and I mentioned this a number of times. 246 people played at those courts in the mornings, the afternoons. They all signed the sheet and said they wanted to continue to play there. Most of them went to Little Silver. And I go over there, and I play over there now because that's the only place I can play. And they all ask me, they're constantly saying, when are those courts going to open again? When are we going to be able to go back to Red Bank? We'd really like to play down there rather than go to Little Silver. I should say wrong, Little Silver. But they want to do that. I gave instructions to kids once a week. They brought kids in.
Once a week or 1 week?
Huh?
Once a week or 1 week?
Once a week
Once a
during the
week.
summer.
During the summer?
For 4 years I did this.
Okay.
30 to 40 kids would show up, 6 to 12 years old, some of them a little older than that. And they got some basic instruction, got into it a little bit. Some of them turned out to be pretty good. That's gone. And I've had some people come up and say, when are we going to do that again? So it's not like this is just a side issue and nobody ever used them, and why should we worry about it? Why should we get involved in it? it's a viable thing. And I've been
It's a
playing down
very
there for
good asset,
18
yeah,
years
I
myself.
agree.
Well, I don't know, too many people don't seem to agree, but that's okay. I just like to see some kind of a proposal that we can look at, and if the borough is not obligated to give the money, we fund it. It should be something we can look at. I mean, that's all we're looking at. Look at it and say, is this viable? It's not going to cost the borough any money. Can we do this? Otherwise, it's going to look, it looks terrible the way it is now.
Thank you. Anybody else from the audience?
One more, please. Hi, I'm Tom Curtis, 62 Woodward, here in Red Bank. A group, I'm in support of what Paul Michelle has already spoken this evening. A group of us have formed a foundation, the Red Bank Clay Court Tennis Foundation. We've registered it with the state, we've got an EIN number, we've applied to the IRS, the tax-free status, that's in process of being looked at. We have articles of association, bylaws, the entire works. We're forming that organization not to be in competition with the city, but to assist the city in helping them restore and plant the courts. We can raise funds, we can do things for the city. And so my question, and I think the question's been asked, is what are the next steps? How do we proceed so that we can get these ideas in front of you, not on a competitive basis, but on an assistance basis? And that's really what we're trying to do.
I'd be glad to give me your information, glad to meet with you and discuss your nonprofit
Okay.
and see how that can dovetail it. And we'll gather all the information and share it with the committee.
Perfect.
I'll meet with you afterwards, Mr. Taro, and make sure I have the current contact information, and we'll share it with the committee.
And I guess the CFO would be included in those discussions, since,
Yes.
you know, if the fund,
Yes.
if they're a not-for-profit who's raising money, she could probably.
John, thank you.
A better explanation
Thank you.
as to how the funds could come into.
Yes, but I do want to say, in all defense to the borough, there are some issues with the proposal which we had to make some decisions with regard to the infrastructure. Because of the decisions we had to make, there may be some modifications to the proposal. Some things we could do, some things we couldn't do. And those took some research, they took some considerations to options of what we could do with our infrastructure. And they had to be decided before we went and talked about raising the courts and or how big an area we can have left for the courts. So it wasn't that we weren't thinking about the courts. It was we had to make some decisions first before we can go ahead, and we had to prioritize. And we never know, the estimates that we came up with 4 weeks after the storm are certainly different than what the actual costs are now. So we had to prioritize first and go forward. Now we're at a point where the contracts have been let, that we have some grant money, we've gotten the grants that we can get, and we're moving forward with the infrastructure work, and we will work on the concepts or proposals that the committee will consider to bring back to the council with regard to the recreational opportunities.
Thank you. Anybody else from the audience?